How are we all doing today, guys? Before we start this, I figured I'd put this at the start this time. I know it's usually at the end, but I wanted this video to be just one seamless, constant video. So, I just want to give a quick shout out to the new people over on Patreon who subscribed. They are Sabina O'Heller and Selena Celestia. Thank you both for subscribing. And I do apologize if there's a little bit of a lack of content over there, but I'm actually working on writing out a series for you guys over there, so please just bear with me just a little bit longer, and I promise I'm going to try my best to make it good. Thank you guys for understanding, and thank you again for subscribing. Now, for today's video, I just wanted to kind of talk and say thank you, every single one of you, for everything that you've done. You guys have made this possible for me, and every single one of you who has taken the time to subscribe and just be here, you all mean more to me than you'll ever realize. So, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Now, for today's video, we're going to be reading a We're going to be reading a Norse mythology legend and stuff like we are going to be reading a Norse mythology legend today. I'm actually super excited because I've had this book for, I think, 2 years now. And the one that I wanted to do today is a story about Loki's 3 children. The story is called The 3 Grizzly Children. There was peace in Asgard. The gods and goddesses felt safe within their newly built walls. And even though they mourned for the loss of Kvasir, Allfather had retrieved the precious mead made from his blood and honey. But we haven't seen Loki for rather a long time, said the Allfather. And neither his wife Sigyn. I wonder where he is and what he's up to. One day, Honir, the god whose legs were so long that all the other gods except for Thor had to run to keep up with him, came back to Midgard with alarming news. 3 children, exclaimed Odin. You're telling me that Loki has fathered 3 children. And their mother's not Sigyn, but a giantess, Honir said. Angrboda, that's what I've heard. Loki is quite dangerous enough as it is, Odin said. We almost lost Freya because of him. And the sun and the moon, added Honir. 3 children, repeated Thor. Let's do away with them. Not so fast, said Odin. Let's have a look at them. And he instructed Thor and Honir to lead a group of gods to the lair of the giantess Angrboda, kidnap her 3 children, and bring them back to Asgard without Loki knowing anything about it. They're his children, the Allfather told them, and he may love them, even if we do not. He may care for them, even if we do not. When all the gods and goddesses saw Loki's 3 children, they were astonished and appalled. The eldest child was a monster serpent called Jormungandr. His eyes were like charcoal moons, and his body was almost as thick as the trunk of the ash tree Yggdrasil itself. As soon as Odin saw him, he knew that fully grown, the serpent would be even more dangerous than a whole posse of giants. "Take him away," the Allfather commanded. "Take him to the place where he can do the least amount of harm." But Jormungandr kept growing larger and larger, even as the gods stared at him. It needed no fewer than 7 gods and their servants to carry the monster, threshing and thrashing all the way to the ocean. They threw him in, and when he was fully grown, the serpent Jormungandr was so long that he was able to wrap around the whole of Midgard and bite his own tail. Loki and Angrboda's second child was a daughter called Hel, and she was 1/2 living woman and 1/2 corpse. Her eyes were sunken, and her expression was grim. The Allfather took one look at Hel, and dropped her right down into the darkness and freezing mist beneath the bottom root of Yggdrasil. The realm where she lived was called by her own name, Hel, and that's where she had her enormous hall and admitted everyone who had died of illness or old age. Loki and Angrboda's third child looked less of a problem. He was a wolf, a cub called Fenrir, and even though he was rather large, the gods allowed him to roam around the plain of Ida. "We can keep an eye on him from day to day," Odin told the other gods. Only one god was fearless enough to approach Fenrir and feed him with haunches of meat, and that was Odin's brave son Tyr. Fenrir grew so fast that the goddesses were alarmed and said he looked larger every time they saw him. "Have you heard the sound he makes when he cracks bones?" Freya asked. "And the way he stares at us," said the goddess Idun. Several of the gods went down to the well of Urd, which was under the topmost root of Yggdrasil, and asked the 3 Norns who lived there what they should do with the wolf cub. "His mother is evil, and his father is worse," the Norn called Fate told them. "He'll fight against the gods in the last battle," the Norn called Being warned them. The third Norn, Necessity, nodded gravely. "Worse," she said. "Much worse. Fenrir will bring about their downfall." In silence the gods listened, and in silence they left. They knew they couldn't stain holy Asgard with blood. Even though Fenrir was growing more dangerous day by day, they didn't know what to do. "We are gods," the Allfather told them, "and Fenrir is nothing but a wolf cub. We know much more than he does. So, we must use our knowledge to trick him. Sometimes cunning is the best way." "I know what we can do," said Njord, father of Freyr and Freya. He had spent long enough in the shipyards in Midgard to know about bullards and grappling irons and moorings and anchors, and he was able to forge an iron chain called a lading. "Very good," pronounced Odin, and he approached Fenrir with the chain. "You see this?" he asked. "You see how strong it is?" Fenrir bared his teeth in a kind of smile and inspected the chain. "It's not very well made," he said, "but I can see it's not weak." "It's certainly stronger than you," Odin provoked him. "Never," Fenrir snarled. Then the wolf cub allowed the gods to truss him with lading, so that he was scarcely able to move. "Ready?" asked the wolf cub, and without waiting for an answer, he flexed his neck and tightened every muscle in his body. He groaned, and all at once the links of lading sprang apart, and Fenrir raced across the plain of Ida howling. "Make another chain," Odin instructed Njord. "Make it twice as thick, and this time be sure the links are really well forged. It needs to be larger than the largest anchor chain in Midgard. This chain is called Dromi, and it took 3 of the gods to drag it up to Asgard. Your life here is worthless, Odin told Fenrir. Fenrir swung his head from side to side. Exactly, said Odin. Unless we win fame from our great deeds, our lives will be without meaning. But you, Fenrir, if you can pry apart this chain, if you can snap it, you'll be famed for your strength throughout the 9 worlds. Fenrir inspected Dromi and padded slowly around it. Fame and risk and fame, he growled. They're yoked together. And that was all he had to say. As the gods heaved and strained and coiled the huge chain around Fenrir's massive neck, body, and legs, in front of the gods and goddesses, the wolf seemed to expand. He did expand. He braced every single muscle in his body, and the gods could hear Dromi grinding, grating, and scarcely able to take the strain. Then, Fenrir somehow rolled and waddled over to one of the large rocks in the plain and summoned up all of his strength and slammed his body into it. Dromi exploded. The gods dived for cover, and some of the iron links flew halfway to the stars. In the safety of his own hall, Odin summoned the gods and goddesses. Sometimes, he said, not even cunning is sufficient. We must use magic as well. He beckoned Freyr's messenger, shining Skirnir, whose body was so bright it lights his way through the dark. The Allfather asked him to go down to the dwarfs to promise them that if they could forge a chain to fetter Fenrir, the gods would reward them with their own weight in gold. 8 dwarves got to work in their gloomy cave. The green eyes glowed, and they made a long ribbon called Gleipnir, suave and soft. As soon as he got back to Asgard, Skirnir presented the ribbon to the Allfather. Odin fingered it. He frowned. Not silk, he said. Almost slithery. What's it made of? 6 things, Skirnir said. The sound a cat makes as it moves, the beard of a woman, a mountain's roots, and a bear's tendons, the breath of a fish, yes, and a bird's saliva. How can that be? Exclaimed Thor. Even if it is, Odin said, I very much doubt whether we'll be able to bind Fenrir with it. Skirnir smiled. Each dwarf is as horrible as the next, he said, and they're extremely greedy, but they're not liars. And I can explain how they're not lying now. How? Demanded Thor. Have you ever wondered why a prowling cat makes no sound? Have you ever stopped to think why women don't grow beards? True, you can't dig up a mountain, but there are many things that seem not to exist, but are actually treasured and used by the dwarfs. So, the gods walked back to the plain of Ida, led by Tyr, the brave god of war, and keeping close for comfort, they slowly approached Fenrir. Would you like to see Lyngvi? Freya asked him. What? Heather Island, there in the middle of the lake. Why? Asked the wolf. We're all going over there for a feast. And, as you've never been there. So Tyr and Heimdall rowed Fenrir across the lake in a barge. He stood in the prow, and the gods and goddesses jammed themselves in the stern. And when they got to the little island, Odin pulled the dwarf's ribbon Gleipnir out of his pocket. He dangled it in front of the wolf. Will you risk it? He asked. Will you let me tie you up? Risk, said Fenrir. I'd be able to snap that with my teeth, and where's the fame in that? This ribbon may be a little stronger than you think, Odin replied. To tell you the truth, we don't know ourselves. Fenrir growled. Don't know? He said. You don't know. Well, if there's magic in it, you can keep it. I'm not having you weave magic around my legs. I thought you were strong, said Thor. I am, growled Fenrir. Stronger than any chains. If you can't rip this pretty little ribbon, lovely Freya said. We'll set you free anyhow. You can trust us. Trust you, snapped Fenrir. I don't trust you. If you were to fetter me, it will be thousands of years before you release me. The wolf locked around and around the group of gods. I don't want to be bound, he said. But I don't want it said that I'm a coward either. Fenrir stopped right in front of the Allfather. All right, bind me. However, one of you must put his hand inside my mouth, so that I know you're not double-crossing me. The gods lowered their eyes. They said nothing. But then, brave Tyr raised his right arm and placed his hand between Fenrir's jaws. At once, the gods wound the ribbon around Fenrir, and the more he strained and struggled and jerked, the tighter it grew. The wolf snarled. His eyes blazed. Then he clamped his jaws, and Tyr shrieked. All the gods and goddesses shouted. They waved their arms and laughed. They all laughed except for Tyr. He had just lost his right hand. The gods knotted the ribbon to a chain, and they threaded that chain through a huge rock with a hole in it, and looped it back on itself. Then, they dug a hole and pushed the rock until it toppled into it, and they dropped another rock on top of that. Fenrir grated and ground his teeth, but when he stretched his bloody jaws, Heimdall jammed his sword between them so that the wolf was unable to close his mouth. Fenrir was fettered. He was gagged all day and all night. The wolf slavered, and a milky river of his spittle and saliva streamed from Heather Island into the lake. So, Jormungandr, the monstrous serpent, waits at the bottom of the salty sea surrounding Midgard, biting on his own tail. In the darkness and freezing mist, Hel sits in her hall of the dead, and on the little island of Lyngvi in the middle of the lake, the wolf Fenrir waits. And the gods and goddesses, they kept remembering the warnings of the Norns, that the wolf Fenrir would fight in the last battle and bring about their downfall. They wondered about where in the 9 worlds Loki had gotten to, and they were anxious about what the trickster would do when he came back to Asgard and found out the fate of his 3 grisly children. He'll want to take revenge, Odin said. But whatever he does, it would be even worse for us if we had done nothing. That's my first attempt at actually, reading to someone, so I hope it sounded okay. This last little bit, I just want to say thank you so much for 7,000 subscribers. I never in a million years thought that this would happen. I never thought people would truly enjoy my voice. So seeing all your comments and all your beautiful, this was amazing, telling me that I make you feel better, just warms my heart. Thank you all for 7,000 subscribers, and I can't wait to see how far we go. Thank you guys. I love you, and I'll see you in the next one. Sleep well.